Welcome to the channel, where we dive deep into the fascinating stories that have shaped our world. Today, we will journey through China's incredible rise, from ancient dynasties to the modern superpower it is today. We'll explore the complexities of its economic growth, political strategies, technological advancements, and how China navigates its growing influence in the world. By the end of this history, you'll not only understand China's historical journey, but also see how it's shaping the future of global affairs. So sit back, relax, and prepare to embark on this epic tale that will leave you wanting to hear more about China's evolution. This is one story you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The Chinese government played a significant role in this transformation, investing heavily in infrastructure projects such as highways, bridges, and skyscrapers, transforming the country's landscape and creating the modern Chinese economy. These rapid developments were driven by both the central government's policies and the ambitious goals of local leaders and enterprises. Despite the economic success, the rise of China was not without problems. China's economic growth came at a high environmental cost. Air pollution, water shortages, and energy consumption became growing concerns as industrial activity surged. Moreover, China's rapid economic expansion highlighted the gap between urban elites and the rural poor. In many cases, the growing wealth of major cities left behind rural areas, where farmers and laborers continued to struggle with poverty. In addition, wage inequality began to rise as the country increasingly relied on a dual economy, in which the wealthy benefited from global integration, while many in the countryside remained trapped in low-paying, labor-intensive work. Politically, China's global influence grew as well. The country's military modernization program, which began in the late 1990s, focused on upgrading China's defense capabilities and creating a military capable of competing with the US and other world powers. China's growing presence in international organizations, including the United Nations, World Trade Organization, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, allowed it to exercise more influence in global diplomacy. However, its increasing assertiveness in territorial disputes, particularly in the South China Sea, Taiwan, and the East China Sea, raised tensions with neighboring countries and the US, leading to fears of a rising China-centered world order. As China's economy continued to grow at an unprecedented pace, the Chinese government began to focus on achieving Chinese dream, a vision articulated by President Xi Jinping in the early 2010s. The Chinese dream represents the ambition of the Chinese leadership to not only achieve national rejuvenation, but to also establish China as a global leader in technology, economic power, and political influence. Under Xi, China's economic policies became increasingly ambitious, with a renewed focus on achieving technological self-reliance and further international expansion. One of the key components of Xi's vision was the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, launched in 2013. The BRI is a massive infrastructure development project aimed at enhancing connectivity and cooperation between countries across Asia, Africa, and Europe. It focuses on the construction of railways, ports, highways, and pipelines, creating a network of trade routes that allow China to establish stronger economic ties and influence with countries in Eurasia, Africa, and Latin America. The initiative is not just about infrastructure. It also aims to facilitate the expansion of Chinese businesses, enhance cultural exchanges, and create new global partnerships. While the BRI has been praised for its potential to foster development and trade in underdeveloped regions, it has also attracted criticism. Critics argue that the Belt and Road Initiative represents a form of neo-imperialism, with China using economic investment and debt as a means to gain political influence in other nations. Many countries involved in the BRI have struggled with debt sustainability, raising concerns about their ability to repay China's loans. In some cases, The initiative has led to accusations of debt-trap diplomacy, with countries being forced to give up control over strategic infrastructure, such as ports, to China in return for financial assistance. Domestically, Xi Jinping's leadership has been characterized by a return to authoritarianism. She has consolidated power within the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and initiated a political crackdown on dissent. Freedom of speech, press, and internet have been increasingly restricted, with the government cracking down on both domestic and foreign journalists, human rights activists, and political dissidents. The Xinjiang region, home to the Uyghur Muslim population, has seen a significant increase in repression, with reports of mass detention camps, forced labor, and efforts to erase Uyghur culture. The CCP has faced widespread criticism for its treatment of the Uyghurs, but Xi Jinping's government has dismissed these concerns, framing them as part of efforts to combat extremism and maintain national security. Xi's authoritarian turn has also included an aggressive crackdown on the Hong Kong protests in 2019, following the proposed extradition law that many feared would erode the territory's special freedoms under one country, two systems. The protests, which drew millions of people to the streets of Hong Kong, were met with violent repression by police, and in 2020, China passed a national security law for Hong Kong, effectively ending its autonomy and curbing political freedoms. In addition to political consolidation, she has continued to champion economic reforms, but with a focus on high-tech innovation and self-sufficiency. His government has placed heavy emphasis on artificial intelligence, 5G technology, and renewable energy as key drivers of future growth. The Chinese government has actively invested in research and development to make China a leader in cutting-edge technologies, with the goal of reducing dependency on foreign countries, particularly in critical sectors like semiconductors and high-tech manufacturing. China's technological ambitions have been met with mixed results on the global stage. On the one hand, China has become a leader in e-commerce, mobile payments, 5G networks, and artificial intelligence, with companies like Alibaba, Tencent, and Huawei making significant strides in international markets. However, China's push for global technological leadership has also led to rising tensions with the West, particularly the United States. The trade war between China and the U.S., which escalated during the presidency of Donald Trump, centered on issues such as intellectual property theft, market access, and China's industrial policies, especially its treatment of foreign companies operating within the country. The United States and its allies have increasingly viewed China's technological rise with concern. Huawei, the world's largest telecommunications company, has been accused of espionage and spying by the U.S., which has banned the company from operating in certain countries, citing national security risks. The trade war between China and the U.S. reached its peak in 2018, when both nations imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods. The U.S. government's ban on Huawei and other Chinese companies, alongside accusations of forced technology transfers and intellectual property theft, has exacerbated tensions between the two nations. In the face of global challenges and increasing tensions with Western powers, China has sought to bolster its relationships with other nations. Belt and Road initiatives continue to expand, with China establishing closer ties with countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. These relationships allow China to secure vital resources, create new trade routes, and build strategic alliances that counterbalance the influence of Western nations. Domestically, China's leadership has faced the ongoing challenge of balancing political control with economic growth. While economic liberalization and rapid development have improved the lives of many Chinese citizens, the government remains deeply suspicious of external influences and continues to heavily censor the internet, restrict freedom of speech, and silence political opposition. The CCP maintains strict control over the political system, and its power remains largely unchallenged within China. As China continues its rise on the world stage, questions remain about its future direction. Will it continue its march toward global economic and technological leadership? How will it manage the internal challenges of inequality, environmental degradation, and political repression? Only time will tell whether China's trajectory will lead to further global dominance or internal transformation. As China entered the 21st century, its growing economic strength, political influence, and military capabilities marked it as one of the most significant global powers. China's meteoric rise on the world stage has been both praised and feared by many, reshaping the dynamics of global geopolitics. With its robust economic growth and political stability under the Communist Party's leadership, China now plays a pivotal role in shaping international relations and the global economy. However, its ascent has also presented a complex set of challenges that the world must navigate. China's foreign policy has evolved dramatically since the reforms of the late 20th century, particularly under Deng Xiaoping, who recognized the need for China to engage with the outside world to sustain its rapid economic growth. The opening up of China's economy not only led to increased trade with Western countries, but also helped China integrate itself into global governance institutions, including the World Trade Organization, WTO, and the United Nations, UN. Over the years, China has become a major player in international organizations, where it exerts growing influence, particularly in the context of economic development, climate change, and global security issues. One of the defining features of China's modern foreign policy is its pursuit of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure project launched in 2013 under President Xi Jinping. The BRI aims to build a network of trade routes and infrastructure projects linking China to Asia, Europe, Africa, and beyond. The initiative, which focuses on developing transportation networks, energy pipelines, and trade routes, has already invested billions in countries such as Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Kenya, and multiple Central Asian states. By expanding China's economic footprint through the BRI, China has cemented its position as a global economic powerhouse, while also deepening its influence in the developing world. However, the BRI has been controversial. Critics argue that it serves as a tool for China to gain political leverage over participating countries, often leading to debt traps that leave nations vulnerable to China's economic and political influence. Countries such as Sri Lanka and Maldives have faced significant challenges in repaying Chinese loans, leading to concerns about China's growing economic influence over these nations. Despite the criticisms, the BRI continues to be a cornerstone of China's foreign policy, with Beijing pushing forward its vision of creating a new global infrastructure and enhancing its geopolitical footprint. While the BRI has been one of China's most ambitious initiatives, China's growing global influence has also been accompanied by increased military assertiveness. In the South China Sea, for example, China has pursued aggressive territorial claims, constructing artificial islands and military bases in disputed waters. These actions have led to tensions with neighboring countries, including Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei, all of which have competing claims to the region. The United States and its allies have expressed concern about China's military expansion in the South China Sea, as it threatens key international shipping lanes and undermines the sovereignty of countries in the region. China's increasing assertiveness in the South China Sea is part of a broader strategy of military modernization. Since the 1990s, China has worked diligently to modernize its People's Liberation Army, PLA, expanding its naval and air forces, developing advanced missile systems, and improving its cyber capabilities. In recent years, China's growing military might has been accompanied by an increasing willingness to project its power beyond its borders. The country's increasing involvement in international peacekeeping missions, its support for regimes in Africa, and its growing presence in international waters have all contributed to its emergence as a formidable military force. China's military expansion has not only been focused on its immediate regional interests, but also on its global ambitions. The country's development of an advanced space program, including its lunar missions and the launch of a space station, demonstrates China's intent to compete with other spacefaring nations, such as the United States and Russia. In 2021, China successfully launched its Tianhe space station module, marking a major milestone in its quest to establish a long-term presence in space. This development places China on par with other space powers and underscores its ambitions to lead in technology and innovation, both on Earth and beyond. China's growing influence in global governance has led to greater involvement in major international organizations. As the world's largest population and second largest economy, China has become a vital partner in addressing global issues such as climate change, global health, and trade regulation. Under Xi Jinping, China has made significant investments in green technologies and pledged to reduce its carbon emissions in the coming decades. China's commitment to combating climate change was highlighted in its 2020 pledge to become carbon neutral by 2060, an ambitious goal that will require massive investments in renewable energy, electric vehicles, and energy efficiency. However, China's approach to international relations has been criticized by many for its authoritarian practices and lack of political freedoms. Despite its economic rise, the country's human rights record remains a key area of concern. China's treatment of ethnic minorities, particularly the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, has drawn international condemnation. Human rights organizations and foreign governments have accused China of committing genocide against the Uyghurs, with reports of forced labor, mass detention, and religious persecution. China has denied these allegations, framing its actions as part of efforts to combat terrorism and extremism. The Hong Kong protests of 2019 and the subsequent implementation of the national security law in 2020 have further strained China's relations with Western countries, with many accusing China of undermining the one country, two systems framework that had been promised to Hong Kong under British rule. The growing tension between China and Western powers, particularly the United States, has led to a new Cold War-style rivalry. The trade war between China and the U.S., which began in 2018, centered on issues such as intellectual property theft, market access, and China's industrial policies. While the U.S. and China reached a Phase 1 trade deal in early 2020, tensions remained high over issues like Taiwan, cybersecurity, human rights, and China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. The U.S. and China have also been at odds over technology, with the U.S. banning Chinese tech giants like Huawei and imposing sanctions on companies with ties to the Chinese government. In response, China has sought to reduce its reliance on Western technologies by investing heavily in domestic alternatives, such as in the semiconductor industry. Beyond the economic rivalry, geopolitical tensions have continued to rise, particularly in the South China Sea and Taiwan. The United States has continued to reaffirm its commitment to Taiwan, despite China's insistence that it is part of its territory. Tensions over Taiwan have sparked concern over the potential for conflict, with the U.S. increasing its military presence in the Indo-Pacific and conducting joint exercises with regional allies. China, on the other hand, has repeatedly expressed its desire for peaceful reunification with Taiwan, but it has also made clear that it is prepared to use force if necessary. As China continues to grow in military strength and global influence, the country faces a range of complex challenges. Domestically, China must balance the need for continued economic development with the realities of an aging population and growing environmental concerns. The country's population is aging rapidly, and a one-child policy, which was in effect for decades, has contributed to a shrinking workforce and increasing demand for social welfare programs. To counter this, The Chinese government has implemented policies to encourage higher birth rates, including easing the one-child policy and offering financial incentives to families. However, it remains to be seen whether these measures will have a lasting impact on the demographic trends. China's environmental challenges are equally significant. Rapid industrialization has come at the expense of the environment, with widespread air pollution, water contamination, and land degradation posing serious risks to public health and long-term sustainability. While China has made significant strides in transitioning to renewable energy sources and addressing pollution, the scale of the country's industrial infrastructure presents ongoing obstacles. The Belt and Road Initiative has also been criticized for promoting infrastructure projects in developing countries that contribute to environmental degradation, further complicating China's environmental efforts. Another significant challenge for China is its political system. While economic reforms have led to unprecedented growth, political liberalization has remained limited. The Communist Party's monopoly on power is unlikely to change in the near future, and the government's tight control over the internet, media, and public discourse continues to limit political freedom and the expression of dissent. The government has also faced criticism for its handling of protests, such as the Hong Kong pro-democracy demonstrations and Xinjiang's treatment of Uyghurs, which have drawn attention from human rights organizations and foreign governments. As China becomes a more powerful force in global politics, its approach to human rights and civil liberties will continue to be a point of contention on the international stage. In the coming years, China's ability to maintain its economic growth, manage its domestic challenges, and navigate an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape will define its future. The world is watching closely as China seeks to assert its place as a global leader. But with that power comes significant responsibility, both to its people and to the international community. As China enters the second quarter of the 21st century, the nation stands at a crossroads. With its meteoric economic rise, the country has transformed from a largely agrarian society into one of the world's leading industrial and technological powerhouses. However, as its global influence grows, China faces a series of critical challenges that will shape its future. These challenges include not only economic modernization and technological innovation, but also issues related to socio-political stability, human rights, and its growing role in global geopolitics. At the heart of China's future lies its technological ambition. In recent years, China has positioned itself as a global leader in several key technological fields, from 5G technology to artificial intelligence, AI, quantum computing, and space exploration. With the rise of companies like Huawei, Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu, China is now seen as a major player in the tech world, competing with the likes of the United States and Europe. These companies are pioneering advancements in everything from smartphones and e-commerce to cloud computing and autonomous vehicles. China's Made in China 2025 initiative, introduced in 2015, outlines the country's plan to become a global leader in high-tech industries, including semiconductors, biotechnology, and renewable energy. China's investments in artificial intelligence have been particularly notable, as the government has made it a priority to become the world leader in AI by 2030. The country's large and growing population, combined with its increasing data collection capabilities, gives it a competitive advantage in developing machine learning algorithms and data-driven technologies. AI applications are already being used in areas such as healthcare, manufacturing, and finance, and have the potential to revolutionize industries across the globe. However, this ambitious technological agenda also comes with complex geopolitical implications. As China advances its technological infrastructure, it faces international scrutiny and pushback, particularly from the United States and its allies. The trade war between China and the U.S. has centered, in part, on issues related to intellectual property, cybersecurity, and technological dominance. Huawei, for example, has become a focal point of tension as Western governments, led by the U.S., have accused the company of spying and cyber espionage. In 2019, the Trump administration placed Huawei on a trade blacklist, citing national security risks. In response, China has sought to build domestic alternatives to Western technology companies and reduce reliance on foreign-made hardware and software. China's technological rise also intersects with its goals of global leadership. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China's flagship foreign policy, aims to establish new infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe, creating global networks of trade and investment. While the BRI is an economic endeavor, it is also seen as a tool to extend China's geopolitical influence and build a more China-centered global order. This strategy, which focuses on building roads, ports, and railways, has been crucial for fostering economic partnerships with developing nations, but has also faced accusations of debt trap diplomacy, as some countries have struggled to repay their loans to China. China's increasing economic power, combined with its technological advancements, has positioned it as a significant global competitor to the United States and Europe. However, the geopolitical tensions surrounding issues like technology transfer, cybersecurity, and trade imbalances have made international relations with China more complex. Additionally, there are concerns that China's increasing assertiveness in regions like the South China Sea and its growing political influence in places like Africa and Latin America could lead to a new Cold War-like scenario, where global powers vie for dominance in key sectors. Internally, China faces a range of social and political challenges as it continues to assert its economic leadership and pursue technological supremacy. While the country has lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty and made significant strides in improving living standards, the government faces mounting concerns about income inequality, demographic changes, and social stability. One of China's biggest challenges is its aging population. Due to the legacy of the one-child policy, which was implemented in 1978 and only relaxed in 2015, China now has one of the world's most rapidly aging populations. The country's workforce is shrinking and the number of elderly citizens is increasing. By 2050, it is estimated that nearly a quarter of China's population will be over 60 years old. This demographic shift presents significant challenges for China's labor market, as the country will face a growing number of retirees and a shrinking pool of working-age individuals. The aging population will also put immense pressure on the country's social welfare system, healthcare infrastructure, and pension programs, which are already underdeveloped compared to other advanced economies. To address this challenge, China has gradually relaxed its family planning policies, allowing couples to have more children. In 2016, the government moved to a two-child policy, and by 2021, it was further expanded to allow 3 children per family. Despite these changes, however, birth rates have not surged as expected. Urbanization, rising living costs, and the pressures of modern life have led many Chinese families to choose to have fewer children. The economic burden of raising children, especially in large cities, combined with concerns about education and career opportunities, has made many couples reluctant to have more than one child. This demographic shift poses a long-term challenge for China's economic model, which has relied heavily on a young workforce. In addition to demographic challenges, China is facing increasing pressure regarding environmental sustainability. As the country industrialized rapidly, it became the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, surpassing the United States. The environmental toll of China's industrialization has been significant, with widespread air pollution, water contamination, and soil degradation. Major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou have faced severe pollution, leading to rising health costs and diminished quality of life for many citizens. However, China has begun to acknowledge the scale of the problem and has implemented numerous initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint. Under President Xi Jinping, China has committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2060 and has invested heavily in renewable energy. China is already a world leader in solar power and wind energy production, and the government has focused on increasing the share of clean energy in the country's energy mix. Despite these efforts, China's reliance on coal remains a significant obstacle to its environmental goals. Coal accounts for nearly 60% of China's energy consumption, and the transition to cleaner sources of energy will be a difficult and expensive process. However, China's commitment to becoming more sustainable is evident in its support for global climate agreements, such as the Paris Agreement, and its drive to become a leader in the clean energy transition. While economic growth and technological innovation have elevated China to the global stage, its internal challenges, particularly in the areas of demography, environmental sustainability, and social inequality, pose significant risks to its future stability. The government's ability to address these challenges, while maintaining its political control and ensuring economic growth, will be key to China's ability to navigate the complexities of the 21st century. China's political system is another critical area where challenges and tensions are increasingly apparent. While the Communist Party, CCP, maintains a tight grip on power, the demand for greater political freedoms continues to grow, especially among China's urban middle class, younger generations, and intellectuals. The CCP has consistently maintained its position by suppressing opposition and limiting political participation. But as China becomes more integrated into the global community, pressure for greater openness and reform has intensified. President Xi Jinping has been at the forefront of this political control, asserting himself as the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao Zedong. Xi's policies have emphasized the centralization of authority, with a growing cult of personality surrounding his leadership. In 2018, term limits for the Chinese president were removed, effectively allowing Xi to remain in power indefinitely. His leadership style has been described as increasingly authoritarian, with an emphasis on tightening the CCP's control over the media, the internet, and civil society. She has also launched extensive anti-corruption campaigns that have both eliminated political rivals and consolidated his power within the party. However, while Xi's leadership has brought a sense of political stability, it has also raised concerns about the lack of political freedom in China. Critics argue that the CCP's iron grip on power undermines the country's ability to adapt to modern democratic values and restricts the freedoms of speech, assembly, and press. The Chinese government has consistently maintained its stance on authoritarian rule, rejecting calls for multi-party democracy and political liberalization. Meanwhile, increasing public discontent with the government's censorship policies and the harsh treatment of dissidents and human rights activists has brought criticism from both domestic and international sources. The Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989, still a sensitive topic in China, remains a stark reminder of the government's intolerance for dissent. The events in Tiananmen highlighted the CCP's willingness to use force to quash any challenge to its authority, and the aftermath of the crackdown created a long-standing atmosphere of political repression. Although the government has largely suppressed discussion of the events, it continues to face international pressure over its human rights record, as China grows more assertive on the world stage. These internal political dynamics will have profound implications for its international relationships. Will China remain an authoritarian state that prioritizes stability over liberalization? Or will it evolve into a more open society as it becomes more deeply integrated into the global community? The answers to these questions will shape not only China's political future, but also its role in shaping the future of global governance. As China moves deeper into the 21st century, its political, economic, and technological trajectory will significantly influence not only the country itself, but the entire global landscape. With its expanding economic might, technological advancements, and political consolidation, China is poised to become one of the most influential nations on the planet. However, as China seeks to establish itself as a global leader, it must also address several internal challenges that could hinder its long-term success. One of China's primary objectives in the coming years will be maintaining social stability. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has long emphasized stability as one of its core principles, and this remains central to its governance strategy. However, China's rapid urbanization, growing wealth disparity, and aging population present potential sources of social unrest. The CCP must balance the demands of modernization and technological progress with the need to provide for social equity and mitigate the growing divide between rural and urban areas. Social stability in China is deeply connected to economic growth. The middle class in China has grown rapidly over the past few decades, and with that growth, there is a rising demand for better living conditions, education, healthcare, and freedom of expression. As urbanization continues, it is expected that the growing number of citizens will increasingly demand better access to quality services and more personal freedoms. The Communist Party, in turn, must grapple with how to satisfy these demands while maintaining its control over the political system. At the same time, China's demographic challenges present a significant long-term issue. China's aging population means that a greater percentage of the population will soon require care, social services, and a pension system. The one-child policy, which has led to a disproportionately small working-age population, has exacerbated the problem. With fewer young workers entering the labor force, the country risks facing a labor shortage, while the demand for elderly care increases. This aging demographic will also create long-term strains on China's economic growth, as the productive workforce shrinks and the costs of healthcare and pensions rise. The government's response to these challenges has been slow, although there have been reforms, such as the shift from a one-child policy to a two-child and even three-child policy. The changing attitudes toward childbearing, particularly in urban areas, have not led to a significant increase in birth rates. Economic pressures, particularly the high costs of raising children in major cities, have made it difficult for many Chinese families to have more children. With an aging population and fewer young people entering the workforce, China may struggle to maintain its economic dynamism in the future. Moreover, China faces serious environmental challenges that will play a major role in shaping its future. As one of the world's largest producers and consumers of energy, China's environmental footprint has grown to unprecedented levels. China's rise as an industrial superpower has come at the expense of its natural environment. The country's coal reliance and the rapid pace of industrialization have resulted in serious air pollution, deforestation, and the depletion of natural resources. In response, the government has set ambitious goals to address these environmental issues, including its pledge to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060 and to significantly reduce its dependence on coal and other fossil fuels. China is already the world's largest producer of solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. The government is investing heavily in clean energy infrastructure, but there are still significant hurdles to overcome in terms of achieving its carbon neutrality targets. Air pollution in major cities like Beijing remains a major public health concern, and many rural areas continue to face environmental degradation. The transition to a greener economy will require significant changes in industrial practices, energy production, and consumption patterns, but it will be a key part of China's strategy to establish itself as a leader in sustainable development. The future of China also hinges on its ability to maintain its leadership in the realm of technology. In the 21st century, technological innovation has become a key driver of economic and political power. China has already made considerable strides in areas like artificial intelligence, AI, 5G technology, and big data, and it continues to prioritize technological self-sufficiency as a central goal. The CCP's Made in China 2025 initiative and the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, are central to China's ambition to lead in high-tech industries and become a global technology powerhouse. China's push to lead in AI, quantum computing, and semiconductors represents a concerted effort to reduce its dependency on foreign technologies, especially as the US and other Western countries have moved to limit China's access to cutting-edge technologies like semiconductors and telecommunications infrastructure. The Chinese government is heavily investing in research and development to foster innovation in these fields, aiming to make China the global leader in technological innovation by 2030. One of the most significant technological achievements for China is its leadership in 5G technology. The country's telecommunications giant Huawei has become the global leader in the development of 5G infrastructure, which promises to revolutionize everything from mobile internet speeds to the Internet of Things, IoT. However, Huawei has been the subject of intense scrutiny from the US and its allies, who claim that the company's close ties to the Chinese government pose a national security threat. Despite these challenges, China's 5G rollout continues to expand, and the technology is expected to play a central role in China's economic future. China has also made significant strides in space exploration. The country has successfully sent multiple missions to the moon and is actively working on establishing a space station in low Earth orbit. In 2021, the Chinese Space Agency successfully landed the Zhurong rover on Mars, making China the second country to achieve this feat. These space achievements demonstrate China's growing capabilities in high-tech industries and further solidify its position as a major player in the global space race. However, China's efforts to maintain its technological edge also come with challenges. The global tech rivalry with the United States has intensified, particularly as the two nations have imposed restrictions on each other's tech companies. The U.S. tech blacklist has hurt Chinese companies like Huawei and TikTok, but it has also pushed China to accelerate its efforts in self-reliance. The rise of technological nationalism in both China and the U.S. is shaping global tech supply chains and threatening to fragment the world into two distinct technological spheres of influence. Additionally, while China's advancements in AI and data-driven technologies offer tremendous potential for growth, they also raise concerns about privacy, surveillance, and the ethical implications of technology. China's social credit system, which uses big data to monitor citizens' behavior, has faced significant international criticism for human rights abuses. The Chinese government's use of artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology to control and monitor its population has drawn widespread concern about the erosion of personal freedoms. In addition to its technological advancements, China faces significant challenges in the realm of global diplomacy. The country's rise as a major geopolitical power has placed it at the center of global attention. As China seeks to expand its influence across the world, it has encountered increasing friction with the United States, Europe, and regional players. The rivalry between the US and China has become the defining feature of international relations in the 21st century. In response to China's growing assertiveness, the United States has sought to contain China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region, as well as limit China's technological and economic expansion. The South China Sea remains a flashpoint in China's geopolitical struggles. China's claims to the region, which are disputed by several Southeast Asian nations, have led to tensions with the United States, which conducts freedom of navigation operations in the area. The Chinese government views its territorial claims in the South China Sea as critical to its economic and security interests, while the U.S. sees China's actions as a challenge to international maritime law and regional stability. China's growing military capabilities have further fueled concerns in the West, particularly as China expands its naval presence and missile systems. The expansion of Chinese military infrastructure in the South China Sea, combined with its military buildup in the East China Sea, has led to fears of a potential conflict, particularly with Taiwan. While China has repeatedly stated its desire for peaceful reunification with Taiwan, it has also made it clear that it will use force if necessary. Taiwan's continued independence and its close ties to the United States have become a major point of tension between China and the West. Despite these tensions, China has also sought to position itself as a global leader in diplomacy. The Chinese government has actively worked to build alliances with developing nations through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative and its growing influence in Africa and Latin America. China's foreign policy is increasingly focused on expanding its soft power through infrastructure development, cultural exchanges, and economic cooperation. As China seeks to assert its global leadership, it will continue to face internal and external challenges. The country must manage the complexities of social stability, economic reform, technological innovation, and global diplomacy while maintaining its political system. How China navigates these challenges will shape not only its future, but the future of the global order. As China's rise continues, the trajectory of its political future is one of the most significant questions for both the nation and the world. Over the past several decades, China has evolved from an impoverished, war-torn country into one of the most powerful and influential nations globally. This transformation has been shaped by a unique combination of authoritarian control, economic reforms, and political pragmatism. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, under the leadership of Xi Jinping, has solidified its hold on power, emphasizing a strong, centralized state and nationalism as pillars of Chinese identity. China's political system is firmly under the control of the CCP, which has ruled since 1949. Xi Jinping's rise to power marked a significant shift in China's leadership style. She has consolidated power in ways not seen since Mao Zedong, pushing the party toward greater authoritarianism. His leadership is characterized by an expansion of the party's control over all aspects of life, including the economy, culture, education, and even the private sector. One of the key features of Xi's administration has been the cult of personality, where his political influence is often viewed as paramount, and his personal vision of China's future is considered central to the CCP's agenda. Under Xi, the CCP has taken a more assertive approach to governance, seeking to eliminate corruption within its ranks through large-scale anti-corruption campaigns. While these campaigns have been popular in their efforts to address corruption at all levels of the government, they have also served to consolidate Xi's power, as many of his political rivals were swept up in these investigations. In 2018, the Chinese constitution was amended to remove term limits for the presidency, effectively allowing Xi to stay in power indefinitely, a significant move that signaled the continuation of his leadership beyond the 2 terms traditionally followed by his predecessors. However, as Xi's tenure has progressed, there have been growing concerns about the authoritarian nature of his rule. The tightening of political control has included further suppression of dissent and greater censorship. The Great Firewall continues to restrict access to information, particularly from the West, while Chinese citizens are monitored through the extensive use of surveillance technology. The CCP has developed sophisticated tools to control the flow of information, ensuring that narratives aligned with the party's goals dominate both the internet and the media. This increased political control has extended to the military and security sectors. The People's Liberation Army, PLA, has grown increasingly powerful, with China focusing on modernizing its military capabilities and improving its defense infrastructure. She has emphasized military readiness and technological advancement in the defense sector, often referring to the PLA as a key element in protecting China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The country's growing influence in military matters is also evident in its increasing presence in international peacekeeping missions and global military operations. As China strengthens its position on the world stage, it faces the dual challenge of managing domestic dissent while also navigating international relations. The regime's approach to governance has been particularly evident in Hong Kong, where the imposition of the national security law in 2020 effectively curtailed the region's political freedoms and autonomy. This law was seen as a direct response to the pro-democracy protests of 2019, which challenged Beijing's increasing control over the territory. The Chinese government's actions in Hong Kong have drawn international condemnation, especially from Western countries, who view it as a breach of the one country, two systems framework that was meant to guarantee Hong Kong's autonomy following its return to China from British rule in 1997. As China consolidates its power domestically, it also faces significant challenges in managing its relationship with the outside world. The growing tension between China and Western countries, particularly the United States, has become one of the defining aspects of modern geopolitics. The trade war, which escalated during the Trump administration, highlighted the economic rivalry between the two nations. The U.S. imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, accusing China of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and market manipulation. In response, China retaliated with its own tariffs, which impacted American companies and led to growing concerns about the potential for a global economic slowdown. The U.S.-China trade war is just one example of the broader geopolitical tensions that have emerged between China and the West. Over the years, China has become increasingly assertive in areas like the South China Sea, where it has built military outposts on artificial islands, asserting territorial claims that are disputed by several Southeast Asian nations. The U.S. military has conducted freedom of navigation operations in the region, challenging China's claims and asserting the importance of maintaining open sea lanes for international trade. The competition between the U.S. and China extends far beyond trade and military issues. Technology has become another critical area of conflict. China's push to dominate in areas like 5G, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity has raised concerns in the U.S. and Europe about China's growing influence in global tech infrastructure. The U.S. has taken a hard stance against Chinese companies like Huawei and TikTok, citing security concerns and fears that these companies could be used by the Chinese government for espionage or data collection. These concerns have prompted several countries to ban or restrict Chinese companies from their markets. Meanwhile, China has sought to build closer ties with other countries, particularly in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure projects, creating new trade routes and building vital infrastructure in developing countries. While these investments have boosted China's soft power and economic ties with many nations, critics argue that they also place recipient countries in debt to China, allowing Beijing to exert political influence over them. China's efforts to build economic partnerships through the BRI have been met with mixed reactions, with some countries welcoming the infrastructure improvements, while others fear that China is pursuing a neo-imperialist agenda that undermines their sovereignty. Another area where China's global influence is growing is in global governance. Over the past few decades, China has increasingly sought to assert itself within international organizations like the United Nations, World Health Organization, WHO, and the World Trade Organization, WTO. China has become a major player in these organizations, using its economic leverage to shape policies in ways that benefit its national interests. For example, China's growing influence in the United Nations Security Council has given a seat at the table on key issues like international sanctions, peacekeeping missions, and global diplomacy. In addition to its role in global governance, China has increasingly engaged in multilateral diplomacy. The country has sought to play a leading role in addressing global issues such as climate change, trade regulation, and global health. China's commitment to the Paris Agreement on climate change, for example, signals its willingness to be a responsible global actor in addressing environmental challenges. However, its commitment to these agreements will be tested by its continued reliance on coal for energy production and its role as one of the world's largest polluters. The global diplomatic stage for China is becoming more complex as it increasingly challenges the dominance of the United States and its allies. With its growing economic power, China has become a crucial actor in key international conflicts and debates. In regions such as the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, China has worked to establish itself as a primary partner for trade, infrastructure development, and investment. By engaging with developing countries in these regions, China has strengthened its diplomatic ties while also expanding its global influence. However, China's rising power has not been universally accepted. The U.S., European Union, and other Western nations have expressed concerns about China's approach to human rights, trade practices, and geopolitical expansion. These concerns have been amplified by issues like the Uyghur crisis in Xinjiang, where China has been accused of committing genocide and human rights abuses against the Uyghur Muslim minority. The Hong Kong protests and the implementation of the national security law have also led to condemnation from the international community, as many see it as China's crackdown on freedom and democracy. The world's response to China's growing assertiveness has been mixed. While some countries, particularly in Africa and Asia, have welcomed China's investments in economic partnerships, others, especially in the West, have sought to counterbalance China's rise through regional alliances, military partnerships, and trade agreements. For example, the Quad, a security alliance between the US, India, Japan, and Australia, has been formed to counter China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region, especially in the South China Sea. On the economic front, China continues to lead the way in global trade and manufacturing. The country's export-oriented economy, built on a foundation of cheap labor and mass production, remains a critical part of global supply chains. China is the world's largest exporter of goods and plays a key role in the production of electronics, automobiles, machinery, and consumer goods. This economic dominance has enabled China to shape international trade rules and set standards for industries like telecommunications, energy, and technology. Looking ahead, China's future will be shaped by its ability to navigate a complex geopolitical environment while managing its domestic challenges. The CCP will need to find a way to balance the growing demands for social freedoms, economic reform, and political stability without losing control over the narrative it has so carefully cultivated. The path China chooses will have significant ramifications not only for its own citizens, but for the broader global order as well. As China advances further into the 21st century, its technological progress and environmental policies will play pivotal roles in shaping both the future of the country and its global influence. China's rapid development has positioned it as a leader in certain high-tech sectors, but is also facing significant challenges as it strives to balance sustainable growth, environmental responsibility, and continued economic expansion. The country's future will hinge not only on its ability to maintain its technological edge, but also on how it addresses the growing demands for a greener economy, climate change mitigation, and the need for more equitable development. Technological innovation and leadership. China's trajectory as a technological giant has been accelerating in recent years. The country has become a leader in artificial intelligence, AI, 5G technology, e-commerce, and big data analytics. Companies such as Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent have revolutionized the tech landscape in China, and their influence extends far beyond its borders. In particular, China's investment in 5G technology has set the stage for major advancements in connectivity, smart cities, and the Internet of Things, IoT. The Chinese government has aggressively pushed for the development of 5G networks, and the rollout of 5G infrastructure is a key component of China's future economic strategy. China is also working to establish itself as a global leader in quantum computing. The country's investment in research and development has yielded significant breakthroughs in quantum communication, quantum encryption, and quantum computing hardware. In 2020, China successfully launched the world's first quantum satellite, which was designed to test secure communication systems using quantum entanglement. These advancements indicate that China may become a dominant force in the next phase of technological evolution, which could lead to the development of unbreakable encryption methods and highly advanced computing capabilities that could reshape industries like finance, security, and medicine. In addition to these advancements, China is also aiming to lead in space exploration. China's space program has grown significantly since the 1990s, and today, the country is actively pursuing a range of ambitious goals. In recent years, China has successfully sent rovers to the Moon and Mars, launched its own space station, Tiangong, and established itself as a significant player in the field of space technology. This growing interest in space exploration is part of China's broader effort to showcase its technological prowess and economic strength to the world. By expanding its space capabilities, China is also positioning itself as a global partner for international collaboration on space missions and technological development. However, China's push for technological dominance comes with challenges. As the U.S. and its allies have increased their scrutiny of Chinese tech giants, the country faces a growing tech war that could disrupt its development. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on major Chinese firms like Huawei and ZTE, citing security concerns over the potential for these companies to be used for espionage by the Chinese government. The restrictions on Chinese tech firms' access to advanced semiconductor chips, software, and hardware could undermine China's progress in critical areas like 5G technology, AI, and quantum computing. These tensions reflect a broader geopolitical rivalry between China and the West, as each seeks to establish dominance in emerging technological sectors. China's role in the global tech ecosystem. The global tech ecosystem is rapidly evolving, and China's role within this ecosystem is increasingly central. As one of the world's largest markets for consumer electronics, e-commerce, and smart technologies, China is both a pioneer and a consumer of new innovations. The growth of mobile payments, digital currencies, and smart devices in China has set the tone for global trends in technology. Companies like Alibaba, JD.com, and Pinduoduo have established China as a hub for e-commerce innovation, providing a model for the rest of the world to follow. China is also investing heavily in the development of digital currencies. The People's Bank of China, PBOC, is at the forefront of developing a central bank digital currency, CBDC, which could be the first digital currency issued by a major global economy. The digital yuan could reshape the global financial system, offering an alternative to traditional banking and payment systems, and it has the potential to challenge the dominance of the US dollar in international trade. China's development of a digital currency could also give the country greater control over its monetary policy and allow it to bypass the traditional financial system that is largely dominated by Western institutions. However, China's technological rise is not without challenges. Intellectual property, IP, theft has been a major issue for China's relationships with Western countries, particularly in the technology sector. The Chinese government has been accused of supporting the theft of trade secrets and technology transfer from foreign companies operating within China. These practices have raised concerns about fair competition and innovation in global markets. While China has made efforts to reform its IP laws, the issue remains a point of contention with the U.S. and its allies. Environmental challenges and sustainability. In addition to its technological ambitions, China faces pressing environmental challenges that will define its future. As the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, China's carbon footprint has been a significant contributor to global climate change. The country's rapid industrialization and reliance on fossil fuels, particularly coal, have made it one of the most significant sources of air pollution, water contamination, and deforestation. These environmental issues are not only harmful to global ecosystems, but also pose significant risks to China's own public health and long-term economic stability. However, China has made significant progress in recent years in shifting toward more sustainable energy sources. The country is now the world's largest producer of solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. In fact, China has set ambitious goals for itself, including achieving carbon neutrality by 2060 and peaking carbon emissions by 2030. The government has invested heavily in renewable energy technologies and has taken steps to reduce its reliance on coal. China has also become a global leader in electric vehicle (EV) production, with companies like BYD, NIO, and Geely driving the transition to cleaner, more sustainable transportation. China's focus on renewable energy is part of its broader strategy to reduce its environmental impact and transition to a greener economy. The country has invested heavily in clean energy infrastructure, including the construction of massive solar and wind farms in remote regions and the development of new energy storage technologies. China is also working to expand its nuclear energy sector as part of its push for low-carbon energy solutions. However, the transition to renewable energy is not without challenges. The reliance on coal remains high, and the country faces significant obstacles in terms of energy efficiency, grid infrastructure, and pollution control. As China's environmental footprint continues to grow, the country's commitment to climate change mitigation will be put to the test. The government's pledge to become carbon neutral by 2060 is ambitious, but achieving this goal will require a significant reduction in emissions, particularly from the industrial and energy sectors. While China has made notable progress in renewable energy, the country remains one of the largest consumers of fossil fuels globally, and its rapid economic growth continues to drive energy demand. Moreover, China's efforts to address climate change are complicated by its growing urban population. Urbanization in China has led to massive environmental challenges in cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, where air pollution, water scarcity, and traffic congestion are major concerns. The government has launched a series of policies to address these urban environmental issues, including the development of green cities, improvements in public transportation, and stricter pollution controls. However, balancing urbanization with environmental sustainability will be a significant challenge in the coming decades. Global leadership and geopolitical ambitions. As China seeks to become a global leader in technology, economics, and sustainability, it also faces the challenge of managing its geopolitical ambitions. China's growing influence in the Asia-Pacific region, Africa, and Latin America has positioned it as a rising superpower, challenging the dominance of the United States and its allies in many key areas of international affairs. One of China's most ambitious initiatives in this regard is the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which aims to build infrastructure, enhance trade, and establish global economic partnerships. Through the BRI, China has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure projects across the globe, creating new trade routes and strengthening its influence in key regions. The initiative has been hailed as a means of promoting development in underdeveloped nations, but it has also faced criticism for creating debt traps in countries that struggle to repay their loans to China. Despite the concerns, The BRI remains central to China's long-term geopolitical strategy as it seeks to expand its economic and political influence. Another area where China has demonstrated its growing influence is in the South China Sea, where it has pursued aggressive territorial claims, despite challenges from neighboring countries. The militarization of the South China Sea has raised tensions between China and its regional neighbors, including Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia, all of which have competing claims in the area. China's actions in the region have drawn criticism from the United States, which has conducted freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's expansive claims. The growing military presence in the region has sparked concerns about potential conflict, particularly as China continues to assert its control over strategically important waterways. In addition to its territorial ambitions, China has also sought to expand its diplomatic influence through global organizations like the United Nations, UN, World Trade Organization, WTO, and World Health Organization, WHO. As one of the largest members of the UN, China has become a key player in global diplomacy, using its economic leverage to shape policy and influence international decisions. In the past decade, China's global leadership has extended to initiatives like the Paris Agreement on climate change, where China plays a central role in advocating for global sustainability while also continuing its efforts to reduce its own emissions. As China continues to expand its role on the global stage, the challenges it faces are becoming increasingly complex. With an economy that is now the second largest in the world, a growing technological presence, and significant geopolitical influence, China is a force to be reckoned with. However, its rise is not without resistance, both internally and externally. The future of China's global influence will depend not only on its ability to manage its own domestic challenges, but also on how it handles its relationship with the United States, its neighbors, and the broader international community. While China's economic growth continues to rise, it must also contend with rising domestic challenges, such as the growing debt burden, rural-urban inequality, and a shrinking workforce due to the country's aging population. These issues, if left unaddressed, could undermine the country's economic stability and slow its ascent on the global stage. Moreover, as China becomes more self-sufficient, it risks further alienating itself from Western markets, which could have long-term consequences for its role in the global economy. The technology race, 5G, AI, and cybersecurity. The technology race between China and the United States has emerged as one of the most critical aspects of their rivalry. China has made significant strides in becoming a global leader in high-tech industries, particularly in 5G technology, artificial intelligence, AI, and cybersecurity. Chinese companies such as Huawei, Tencent, and Baidu are at the forefront of this technological push, and their innovations are shaping industries worldwide. China's ability to dominate the 5G network infrastructure, in particular, has sparked a global competition for technological supremacy. The U.S., however, has expressed strong concerns about China's dominance in 5G technology, fearing that Chinese companies could use their control over global telecommunications networks for espionage or cyber attacks. The U.S. has led efforts to ban Huawei from building 5G networks in several Western countries, citing national security risks. The Chinese government has denied these accusations, arguing that its companies operate independently of the state and adhere to international standards. However, the growing technological rivalry between the U.S. and China raises questions about data privacy, cybersecurity, and the ethical implications of AI. China's commitment to advancing its technological capabilities is evident in its pursuit of AI-driven innovation. The Chinese government views AI as a critical component of its future economic growth and global competitiveness. It has outlined plans to become the global leader in AI by 2030, and its investments in AI research and development are outpacing many Western nations. AI technologies are being applied across multiple sectors, including healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, and finance. The integration of AI into various industries promises to revolutionize the way China operates, from smart cities to autonomous vehicles. However, the rapid adoption of AI and other advanced technologies raises concerns about job displacement and social inequality. As China pushes for greater automation and digitalization, the risk of widening the income gap between urban elites and rural workers becomes more pronounced. The increasing reliance on big data and AI algorithms to monitor citizens also raises concerns about privacy violations and the potential for state surveillance. These concerns are compounded by China's use of facial recognition technology, which is being deployed across the country to monitor public spaces and control the flow of information. Global diplomacy and China's rising influence. Beyond trade and technology, China's global influence is growing through its participation in international diplomacy and its increasing involvement in global organizations. In recent years, China has sought to position itself as a responsible and influential member of the international community. Through its participation in the United Nations, UN, World Trade Organization, WTO, and World Health Organization, WHO, China has sought to shape global policies and promote its interests on the world stage. One of the key aspects of China's diplomatic strategy is its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which aims to build infrastructure, foster economic development, and strengthen trade links between China and countries across Asia, Africa, and Europe. The BRI has allowed China to deepen its economic ties with a wide range of nations, while also asserting its influence in regions traditionally dominated by the West. While the initiative has been hailed as a way to promote development in underdeveloped regions, it has also been criticized for creating debt traps in some countries, as many of the nations involved have struggled to repay their loans to China. This has led to accusations of neo-imperialism, with critics arguing that China is using the BRI to expand its political influence and economic dominance in the developing world. Despite these criticisms, the BRI has been a major success for China, allowing it to cement relationships with countries in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. The initiative is also seen as part of China's broader goal of achieving global leadership in the 21st century. By investing in infrastructure projects in these regions, China is not only promoting economic growth, but also creating a network of countries that are more reliant on Chinese investment and trade. As a result, China is becoming a more prominent player in global diplomacy, shaping international relations and policies in ways that reflect its growing power. In addition to its economic initiatives, China has also sought to expand its influence in international institutions. Over the years, China has become a leading member of the United Nations Security Council, where it wields significant influence in matters related to global security. The country has used its position to push for reforms in international governance systems and to advocate for policies that support its strategic interests. For example, China has led efforts to reshape the international trade system, pushing for changes in the World Trade Organization, WTO, that would benefit its economic agenda. Similarly, China has taken a more active role in climate diplomacy, committing to reduce its carbon emissions and invest in renewable energy technologies. China has also worked to expand its presence in global financial institutions, such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF. As its economic power continues to grow, China is pushing for a larger voice in these institutions, advocating for reforms that reflect the changing dynamics of the global economy. In addition, China has established its own development bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, which rivals Western-led financial institutions and give China greater control over infrastructure financing in Asia and beyond. However, China's rise as a global diplomatic force is not without challenges. Its assertive foreign policy, particularly in Hong Kong, the South China Sea, and Taiwan, has led to growing tensions with the U.S. and its allies. The international community remains deeply divided over how to engage with China, balancing the country's growing economic importance with its human rights record and its increasingly authoritarian domestic policies. China's national security law in Hong Kong, its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, and its role in global cyber attacks have all drawn condemnation from human rights organizations and Western governments. Despite these challenges, China's ability to shape global affairs is undeniable. As it continues to expand its economic, technological, and diplomatic influence, the world will have to navigate the implications of a rising China. The future of global governance will likely depend on how China and the West manage their rivalries, cooperation, and competition in the coming decades. China's political system and internal challenges. As China looks toward the future, its domestic political system remains a crucial factor in determining its trajectory. The Communist Party of China, CCP, has maintained an iron grip on power since its founding, and under Xi Jinping, the party's control has only grown stronger. Xi's leadership style is characterized by centralized authority, a cult of personality, and a lack of political pluralism. While China's economic success has garnered significant praise, the political system remains deeply authoritarian, with little room for political dissent or opposition. The Chinese Communist Party has positioned itself as the guardian of national stability, arguing that its centralized control is necessary to maintain order and facilitate economic growth. However, the party's tight grip on power has led to growing concerns about human rights and civil liberties. The lack of political freedom in China, particularly the restrictions on freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the press, has drawn significant criticism from Western governments and human rights organizations. One of the most significant issues facing China is the growing call for greater political freedom from the younger generation. While the country's urban middle class has benefited greatly from economic reforms, many young people are becoming increasingly disillusioned with the lack of political opportunities and social mobility. The internet, while heavily censored, has become a space for Chinese citizens to express their dissatisfaction with the system, particularly through social media platforms. However, the government has cracked down on dissent, using surveillance and social credit systems to monitor and suppress political opposition. Despite these challenges, the CCP remains deeply entrenched in Chinese society. The party has successfully cultivated a strong sense of nationalism, appealing to the public's pride in China's economic progress and its rise on the global stage. The Chinese government has portrayed itself as a defender of sovereignty, particularly in the face of Western interference. This nationalism has helped the CCP maintain support, particularly among older generations, who view the party's leadership as essential to China's continued stability and growth. The CCP's future success will depend on its ability to address both its internal political challenges and its external relations with the world. If China continues to tighten its political control, it may risk alienating its more liberal-minded citizens and international partners. At the same time, its growing economic power and global influence will likely give the CCP the resources it needs to maintain its dominance for the foreseeable future. How China navigates its political future, especially in terms of balancing authoritarian control with social stability, will be critical to determining its role as a global superpower. As China continues to evolve, its future will not only be shaped by its economic prowess and technological leadership, but also by its ability to manage global relationships, domestic challenges, and environmental sustainability. With an aging population, growing urbanization, and increasingly strained natural resources, China's path forward requires balancing the demands of modernization with a need for social stability and environmental responsibility. Additionally, China's growing geopolitical influence is prompting a re-evaluation of its role in the global order, with implications for international trade, security, and global governance. Environmental sustainability and innovation. China's environmental future is perhaps the most pressing issue it faces, as the country's rapid industrialization over the past few decades has come at the expense of its natural resources. The country's commitment to becoming carbon neutral by 2060 and peaking carbon emissions by 2030 reflects the urgent need to address the environmental challenges it faces. With air pollution, water scarcity, and resource depletion among the most critical environmental threats, China is under increasing pressure to implement sustainable solutions to maintain its growth trajectory while reducing its carbon footprint. The country's reliance on coal for energy production is a major contributor to its greenhouse gas emissions, and transitioning to cleaner energy sources presents a daunting challenge. However, China has already made significant strides in the renewable energy sector, becoming the world's leading producer of solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles, EVs. In fact, China has set a goal to produce half of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030, with major investments in wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. These efforts to develop renewable energy infrastructure are not only critical for reducing China's carbon emissions, but also present new opportunities for technological innovation and green jobs. While China's advancements in renewable energy are commendable, there are significant barriers to achieving a fully sustainable economy. For instance, China remains the world's largest consumer of coal, and transitioning away from this fossil fuel will require massive investment in alternative energy infrastructure and a complete overhaul of its energy consumption model. Moreover, China's cities, which are growing at an unprecedented rate, must find ways to cope with the challenges of urbanization. With hundreds of millions of people expected to move into urban areas over the next few decades, the pressure on water resources, housing, and transportation infrastructure will only intensify. To address these issues, the Chinese government has begun focusing on eco-cities and green urbanization initiatives, which aim to integrate environmental sustainability into city planning. Cities like Shenzhen and Hangzhou have made strides in incorporating green building practices, sustainable transportation systems, and clean energy sources into their development. These cities are seen as models for how China can modernize while reducing its environmental impact. Yet, scaling these efforts to a nationwide level remains one of the most difficult challenges facing China in its quest for sustainable growth. In addition to its domestic efforts, China is increasingly investing in global green initiatives. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China has made large-scale investments in sustainable infrastructure projects in developing countries, including the construction of solar farms, wind energy projects, and eco-friendly housing. While these projects help address energy poverty and promote sustainable development globally, critics argue that some BRI projects still rely on unsustainable construction practices and fail to adequately address environmental impacts. Therefore, for China to truly become a global leader in sustainability, it must ensure that its overseas projects align with the same green principles that it is promoting at home. Geopolitical ambitions and global power dynamics. China's increasing presence on the global stage is not limited to economic influence. It is also expanding its geopolitical footprint through military modernization and a more assertive foreign policy. As China strives to assert its power and influence, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, it is challenging traditional power structures, particularly the United States, its allies, and other emerging powers like India. The country's growing military capabilities, along with its assertive stance on issues like the South China Sea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, have raised concerns among Western nations, while countries in the region are also rethinking their relationships with China. The South China Sea remains one of the most contentious areas in China's geopolitical strategy. China claims large portions of the South China Sea, which are also claimed by several other countries, including Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. The militarization of artificial islands in the region has sparked widespread condemnation, particularly from the United States, which has conducted freedom of navigation operations in the area to challenge China's territorial claims. This has created tensions between China and the U.S. and further complicated relations with Southeast Asian countries that depend on the sea for vital trade routes and natural resources. In addition to its territorial disputes, China's position on Taiwan continues to be a major source of friction in its relationship with the West. While China considers Taiwan to be an integral part of its territory, Taiwan's democratic government has consistently resisted Beijing's calls for reunification. The United States has historically supported Taiwan through arms sales and political backing, and this has been a major source of tension between the U.S. and China. As both nations increase their military presence in the Indo-Pacific region, the potential for conflict over Taiwan continues to grow. China's increasing military assertiveness in the South China Sea and its growing influence over Hong Kong have prompted many nations to reassess their diplomatic and security strategies. The United States, for example, has bolstered its alliances with countries like Japan, South Korea, India, and Australia to counterbalance China's rising power in the Indo-Pacific region. These alliances, particularly through the Quad, a security alliance between the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia, are seen as a counterweight to China's growing military presence in an attempt to secure freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. China's strategic goal of becoming a global superpower extends beyond military might and territorial control. The country is leveraging its growing economic influence to reshape the global order, especially through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which is designed to create a global trade network that aligns with China's economic and geopolitical interests. The BRI is not just an economic project, but also a strategic effort to assert China's dominance in global governance, particularly by strengthening ties with developing nations across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Internal challenges and social transformation. While China's rise as a global power is impressive, its internal challenges will play a significant role in shaping its future. The country's economic growth has been nothing short of remarkable, but social inequality, aging population, and environmental degradation continue to pose significant risks to its long-term stability. The success of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, will largely depend on its ability to manage these domestic challenges while maintaining political control. The aging population remains one of China's most significant demographic challenges. Due to the one-child policy, which was implemented in 1979 and only relaxed in recent years, China now faces a shrinking workforce and a rapidly aging population. By 2050, it is estimated that nearly 1/4 of China's population will be over 60 years old. This demographic shift presents a significant challenge to China's labor market, as the country will experience a growing number of retirees and an increasingly smaller working-age population. The country's pension system is underdeveloped, and its healthcare infrastructure is insufficient to meet the needs of an aging population. To address this issue, China has introduced measures such as the two-child policy, which later expanded to allow 3 children per family, in an attempt to increase birth rates. However, these policies have had limited success, and the fertility rate remains well below the replacement level. Young people, particularly in urban areas, are reluctant to have children due to the high cost of living, education expenses, and the pressure of career advancement. Without a significant increase in the birth rate, China's demographic crisis will worsen, leading to a shrinking labor force and a growing dependency ratio, which will place further strain on the economy and social systems. Another significant domestic challenge for China is its growing social inequality. While the country has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, the gap between the rich and poor continues to widen, particularly in urban areas. China's middle class has grown significantly, but so has the wealth gap between cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou and the rural interior. These disparities in wealth, access to education, and social services have created a growing sense of discontent among lower-income and rural populations. Addressing this inequality will be essential to maintaining social stability and ensuring that China's growth benefits all segments of society. China's education system has also become a key area of focus. The country's education system, while producing a growing number of highly skilled workers, has been criticized for being overly focused on rote memorization and exams, rather than fostering creativity and critical thinking. As China seeks to become a global leader in innovation, the need for a more flexible and forward-thinking education system is increasingly evident. The government has made efforts to address this issue, but cultural and institutional changes will take time to implement. The role of technology in social transformation. One of the ways China is addressing its internal challenges is through technological innovation. The country has embraced big data, artificial intelligence, AI, and digitalization as tools for improving social services, managing its growing urban population, and promoting economic development. From a social credit system to the use of facial recognition technology, China is increasingly using technology to monitor and regulate its population. These systems are designed to encourage social compliance, reduce crime, and streamline government services, but they have raised significant concerns about privacy and civil liberties. One of the key areas where technology is transforming Chinese society is in healthcare. China has rapidly expanded its use of digital health technologies, including electronic medical records, telemedicine, and AI-driven diagnostic tools. These innovations are helping to expand access to healthcare services, especially in rural and underserved areas. China has also invested heavily in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals to address its growing public health needs, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to healthcare, China is using technology to address its transportation challenges. The country has made significant investments in high-speed rail, electric vehicles, and smart cities. The expansion of the high-speed rail network has reduced travel time between major cities and improved connectivity across the country, while electric vehicles are helping to reduce pollution and dependence on fossil fuels. These technological advances are part of China's broader push to create smart cities that leverage data and technology to improve urban living standards. China's global leadership, the future path. Looking ahead, China faces significant questions about its role in global leadership. As its economic power continues to grow, the country is poised to challenge the global order established by the United States and its allies. The ongoing U.S.-China rivalry will be one of the defining features of global politics in the 21st century, particularly as both nations compete for dominance in key areas like trade, technology, and military strength. China's global ambitions are closely tied to its desire to reshape international institutions to reflect its growing influence. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China is working to create new trade routes, develop infrastructure in developing countries, and extend its influence in regions traditionally dominated by Western powers. While the BRI has been praised for fostering economic development, it has also sparked concerns about debt sustainability and China's political influence over participating countries. China's growing influence in global governance is evident in its active participation in organizations like the United Nations, World Trade Organization, and World Health Organization. As China's economic power continues to rise, It is likely to exert more influence over international decisions, particularly in areas like trade policy, climate change, and global health. China's role in shaping global norms and standards in sectors like technology and renewable energy will be critical in determining the future global order. At the same time, China faces significant opposition from Western nations, particularly the United States. The U.S.-China rivalry is likely to intensify as both nations pursue their own interests in global governance. Issues like Taiwan, the South China Sea, trade imbalances, and intellectual property are likely to remain key points of contention. The U.S. and its allies will continue to challenge China's growing influence in international institutions and its push for global leadership. In the coming decades, China's path will be shaped by its ability to balance its internal challenges, technological ambitions, and geopolitical influence. The country's future will depend on how effectively it manages the growing demands of a modern society while maintaining authoritarian control over political life. The global order will also be transformed by China's rise, with significant implications for international relations, trade, technology, and governance. China's future is uncertain, but its continued rise as a global superpower is inevitable. Whether it becomes a leader in the 21st century, not just economically, but also in terms of its political system, remains to be seen. The world is watching closely as China navigates its way forward. As China continues to grow in both economic and political power, its global ambitions are becoming increasingly clear. From its trade strategies to its growing influence in technology, finance, and geopolitics, China's role in the world is evolving rapidly. While China is on track to become the world's largest economy in the coming decades, its rise is marked by both opportunities and significant challenges, particularly in its relations with Western powers and neighboring countries. China's trade strategy, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. One of the key components of China's global strategy is its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a sprawling infrastructure and investment project aimed at connecting China with the rest of the world. Officially launched in 2013, the BRI focuses on creating a network of trade routes, ports, railways, and energy pipelines that link China with countries across Asia, Europe, and Africa. The BRI aims to strengthen China's economic ties with developing countries and enhance its global influence by funding infrastructure projects in strategic regions. While the BRI has brought much-needed infrastructure to developing nations, it has also sparked concerns among some critics. The initiative is often seen as a way for China to expand its political and economic influence over countries that may find themselves deeply in debt due to Chinese investments. Several countries involved in the BRI have faced challenges repaying Chinese loans, leading to accusations that China is engaging in debt trap diplomacy. Some critics argue that China's economic investments could turn into political leverage, giving Beijing a powerful tool to gain influence in key regions, such as Africa, South Asia, and Eastern Europe. Despite these concerns, China has managed to expand its geopolitical influence through the BRI, especially in regions where Western powers have less influence. Through financial aid, investment in infrastructure, and diplomatic partnerships, China is strengthening its relationships with countries that were once reliant on European and American aid. This is particularly evident in regions such as Africa, where China is rapidly becoming a major economic partner. By building ports, railways, and hospitals, China is not only expanding its economic footprint, but also positioning itself as a leader in global development. The BRI is also a strategic tool for China's soft power. While hard power like military strength remains a key part of its geopolitical strategy, China is increasingly using cultural diplomacy, education exchanges, and economic partnerships to expand its global reach. By fostering goodwill through infrastructure projects and cultural exchanges, China aims to create an international environment in which its political influence is more accepted. The goal is to project a positive image of China's rise, positioning the country as a global leader that offers a viable alternative to the Western-dominated international order. Despite its growing influence, the BRI has not been universally accepted. Some countries, particularly in Europe and the United States, have voiced concerns about the long-term implications of China's investments, with fears of growing dependency on Chinese capital and the erosion of sovereignty. The initiative's critics argue that China's investments could be used to establish a network of influence that could challenge existing global institutions and norms. The success or failure of the BRI will depend on China's ability to balance economic development with political autonomy for participating nations. China's technological leadership and competition. As China continues to assert its economic power, it is also emerging as a leader in the technology sector. From 5G networks and artificial intelligence to quantum computing, China is working to position itself as the global hub for cutting-edge technology. The country's success in areas like telecommunications, e-commerce, and digital finance has reshaped global industries, with Chinese tech giants like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent leading the way. One of the most important areas where China is establishing technological dominance is in 5G technology. As the world transitions to 5G, China is building global infrastructure for fast, high-capacity internet and connected devices. Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications company, has become the world's largest supplier of 5G infrastructure, despite facing resistance from the United States and European Union. The U.S. has accused Huawei of espionage and security risks, leading to a global tech war between China and Western powers. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Huawei and pressured its allies to exclude the company from their 5G networks, citing concerns over data privacy and national security. Despite these challenges, China's advancements in 5G have positioned it as a leader in next-generation communication. As the country continues to expand its 5G infrastructure, it is also developing a domestic ecosystem of devices and applications that leverage this technology. China's push for technological self-sufficiency and global leadership is evident in its growing focus on AI, which is seen as a critical area of economic development. The Chinese government has set ambitious goals to become the world leader in AI by 2030, with heavy investments in research and development. Chinese companies like Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent are at the forefront of AI innovation, with applications in automated vehicles, finance, healthcare, and e-commerce. However, China's technological rise also comes with significant challenges. The U.S.-China tech rivalry is shaping global supply chains and standards for everything from 5G networks to artificial intelligence. The U.S. has pushed back against Chinese dominance in these sectors, arguing that China's growing tech power poses a threat to Western values and global security. Additionally, China's technological landscape is highly regulated by the government, raising concerns about data privacy, surveillance, and human rights. China's use of artificial intelligence for social control has raised ethical questions about the balance between technological innovation and individual freedoms. In the coming years, the global tech competition between the U.S. and China will intensify. Both nations will continue to vie for leadership in innovation, cybersecurity, and digital infrastructure, with significant implications for global governance. The outcome of this technological rivalry will shape not only the future of the tech industry, but also the broader geopolitical landscape. China's role in global diplomacy, navigating geopolitical tensions. As China strengthens its economic and technological presence, it is simultaneously asserting itself as a global diplomatic power. The country's approach to diplomacy is shaped by its growing influence in international institutions and its assertive foreign policy. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, China has become more active in global governance and has increasingly taken on a leadership role in international forums like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the World Health Organization. One of China's primary diplomatic tools is its engagement in multilateral organizations, where it uses its growing economic influence to shape global decisions. For instance, in the United Nations, China has become a key player in peacekeeping missions, climate change negotiations, and international security matters. The country's growing influence in the UN Security Council has allowed it to exercise significant control over global security decisions. China's approach to global governance reflects its vision for a multipolar world order, where emerging powers like China, Russia, and India play a larger role in shaping international policies. China's growing influence in international trade has also been central to its diplomatic strategy. As one of the world's largest exporters and manufacturers, China has used its trade relationships to strengthen its global standing. Its participation in the World Trade Organization, WTO, has allowed China to play a larger role in global trade negotiations, while the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, has positioned China as a major financial partner for infrastructure projects in developing countries. By providing funding for infrastructure development and offering loans to countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, China is deepening its economic influence and expanding its global reach. However, China's rise as a global diplomatic power is not without friction. As China asserts its influence on the global stage, it has faced increasing criticism from Western countries, particularly over its handling of human rights issues, regional disputes, and its increasingly authoritarian domestic policies. The Hong Kong protests, the treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang, and its territorial claims in the South China Sea have all raised concerns about China's growing influence. In response, the United States and its allies have worked to counterbalance China's actions by strengthening their own regional alliances, such as the Quad, the US, India, Japan, and Australia, and the Five Eyes intelligence network. China's regional influence has been particularly evident in Asia, where it has expanded its military presence and increasingly asserted its control over the South China Sea. The country's territorial claims in the region, which overlap with those of several other Southeast Asian nations, have led to tensions with neighboring countries. China's construction of artificial islands and its militarization of disputed waters have sparked widespread concerns among countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia, all of which have competing claims to the region. In response, the United States has conducted freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's territorial claims and assert the importance of open sea lanes. China's relationship with Taiwan is also a significant point of tension in its geopolitical strategy. While China considers Taiwan to be an integral part of its territory, Taiwan's democratically elected government has resisted Beijing's calls for reunification. The United States has historically supported Taiwan through arms sales and diplomatic backing, which has fueled tensions between the two superpowers. As China seeks to assert control over Taiwan, it faces growing international opposition, particularly from the U.S. and its allies in the Indo-Pacific region. In addition to its territorial disputes, China has also faced criticism over its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. While the country was lauded for its early response to the virus and its swift recovery, its initial handling of the outbreak in Wuhan has been questioned by the international community. The lack of transparency surrounding the origins of the virus, coupled with accusations of cover-ups and delayed information sharing, has led to growing frustration among Western nations. Despite these criticisms, China has used the pandemic as an opportunity to strengthen its global influence, offering medical aid and vaccine supplies to countries around the world. The future of China's role in global leadership. Looking ahead, China's future role in global leadership is likely to be defined by its ability to navigate geopolitical tensions while continuing its economic growth. As the world's second-largest economy, China's economic power will continue to shape global trade, finance, and industry. However, its increasing influence is also sparking a global competition for leadership in key areas like technology, climate change, and geopolitical influence. One of the most important questions facing China is how it will manage its growing influence within international institutions. As China seeks to reshape the global order, it will need to balance its ambitions with the legitimacy of established powers, such as the United States and the European Union. China's engagement in multilateral organizations will likely continue to play a central role in shaping the global economic system and trade regulations. But it will also face pushback from Western nations who view China's growing influence as a challenge to the existing global norms. In addition to its growing influence in global governance, China will need to address its domestic challenges in order to maintain its global standing. The country's economic growth has slowed in recent years, and it faces rising concerns about inequality, environmental sustainability, and its aging population. The future of China's global leadership will depend on how well it can adapt to these challenges while maintaining political stability and continuing its technological advancements. If China is able to successfully address its internal issues, it will continue to play a central role in shaping the future of the global system. The future of China is a story of both promise and complexity. Its growing economic power, technological innovation, and geopolitical influence will undoubtedly have a profound impact on the world, but its ability to balance these factors with the demands of social stability, human rights, and environmental sustainability will determine its place in the world in the years to come. The world is watching closely as China prepares to chart its course in a rapidly changing global landscape. And that's a wrap on today's journey through the rise of China. We've witnessed how it transformed from ancient kingdoms to a modern powerhouse, navigating challenges, embracing technological innovations, and asserting its role on the global stage. So what's the moral of the story? China's rise teaches us the importance of adaptation and strategy in a constantly changing world. It reminds us that while economic growth is crucial, sustainability, political stability, and global diplomacy are key to a nation's long-term influence. If you enjoyed today's history, make sure to subscribe to this history channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more captivating stories from the past and present. We've got much more history to uncover, and I can't wait to bring it to you again. Until next time, keep exploring the past with this channel. See you soon. This should give your channel a welcoming and engaging vibe, inviting people to come back for more history content.